Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast to elevate your experience of life, an experience you're creating. In this episode, how can we best help our brain stay sharp till our end? We're in an information age, and I don't feel there are any or many new topics and that there's little actual new information. But we can discover new insights and new angles and information that's, I think, more relevant for our current culture and ourselves. And sometimes I interest myself in a specific individual and their role within a topic, and I want to hear their take on it. So with that said, in this episode, I'm with Dr. Majid Fotuhi. So Harper Collins is one of the world's biggest publishers, one of the top 5, and they sent me a galley copy, which if you're watching the video, that's the book sitting over my shoulder here. It's a pre-copy in essence before the book's actually published. So send it to me to review. And the book's called The Invincible Brain, the clinically proven plan to age-proof your brain and stay sharp for life. Well, I'm very interested in brain health just personally. I mean, I want to be cognitively sharp and able until my last breath, if at all possible. And I'm interested in Majid's background. He earned his PhD in neuroscience from Johns Hopkins University and then his medical degree from Harvard Medical School. So 2 institutions I greatly respect. Majid is currently an adjunct professor at the Mind Brain Institute at Johns Hopkins University, while also teaching at George Washington University and Harvard Medical School. So he's got 37 years of experience in teaching, clinical practice, and neuroscience research. Majid's really just a pioneer in enhancing brain vitality and cognitive performance. And he actually developed a brain fitness program. We're going to talk about pieces of that today that are in his book. And it targets lifestyle optimization and cognitive stimulation to improve memory, focus, and overall brain health. The program's delivered measurable success. This is where my interest is for patients dealing with memory loss due to aging, concussions, and ADHD. I'm just interested for my own aging. I'm doing all that I can, but what can I do specifically for the brain? I think anything I do for my health and wellness, my overall well-being, is going to aid my brain. What specifically focuses on this muscle I have of brain? So coming up next, my conversation with Dr. Majid Fotuhi to discuss his findings as he works to keep his own brain invincible and help you and me do it as well. So let's elevate our experience of life. Majid, when this book, your topic here, came across my desk, the idea of an invincible brain, one of my core motives for my own health and wellness and well-being pursuit is just that. I want my health span to equal my lifespan. And I'd rather die younger, but have full cognitive abilities than linger without those. So I'm well aware of that, but it brought me to, it's actually I may have a galley copy here, but in mine, it's chapter 3, at least, of your book. And you start off right there with, why would you want an invincible brain? And I know later in the book, and we'll get to it, you talk about purpose, but I wanted to start there, just the motive, because it's easy to assume that doesn't everybody want an invincible brain? But we look at that and I felt it was a good time to audit. What do I really, and why? Does that feel like the crux really of our getting off on this path, is figuring out why?
I think that many people share your ideas in that they want to grow old, but they don't want to live life if they're demented. In my experience of seeing thousands of patients, this is a very common expression I hear from my patients. They say, I want to live a long life, but I don't want to live life if I'm not with it. If I don't have my marbles, I don't want to live life at all. And the good news is that we can help people maintain their level of cognitive functions well into their 90s. For the first time in decades, we have scientific evidence that it is possible to keep your brain young as you grow older. Just like you, Kevin, are keeping your body strong. And in the old days, let's say you are in late 40s or early 50s, someone in 50s would not be as good a shape as you are now. And look around you, especially in Colorado. When you go skiing, you see a lot of people skiing really well in their 80s. I don't know about 90s. When I come there and I go skiing, I love it when I go on ski lifts and I see these older adults who are just giggling like teenagers, getting off and on the ski lifts. And so we know, based on this new generation of older adults, that it is possible to keep our brains sharp. And I look forward to getting older and keeping my brain sharp.
Okay, on that, possible to keep our brains sharp. I have for a long time now felt that we as a culture have this misperception that our brain is separate or compartmentalized from the rest of our body, that we can sit here at the computer and just be brilliant and never move. And maybe our body starts having problems, but our brain is going to be intact. And I'm not the doctor. I'm not the scientist. I'm not the researcher, but I have not seen that. When you talk about Colorado, yeah, I'm out here. And if I show up to a running race or a cycling race or go skiing, I'm used to seeing people, 80s and 90s, who are obviously, by proxy of being in that physical activity, they're physically fit. I have not encountered, I want to say at all, but I don't recall encountering somebody who was physically well, who was not also mentally well. But I do feel like we don't honor that association.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's an old saying, healthy body, healthy mind. And that's so true. What most people don't appreciate is that your heart impacts your brain. That's an obvious one, right? Because the stronger your heart, the more blood flow you will have in your brain will function well. But most people don't appreciate that muscles generate proteins and hormones called myokines. And these myokines have direct neuroprotective benefits for the brain. Bones make something also that produces these hormones that are good for the brain. And of course, most people have heard about the link between the guts and the brain. And of course, it goes without saying that if your lungs are nice and strong and fresh, you'll be able to supply fresh oxygen to your brain. And of course, if your liver is functioning well, you're detoxifying all the chemicals in your blood, which means you're protecting your brain from exposure to potential toxins. So we are learning more and more that our muscles, our bones, our liver, our gut, and our heart are intimately connected with our brain. And in order for us to have a sharp brain, we need to have a strong body and vice versa. Because when you are a sharp person, you appreciate that you need to take care of your body. So instead of sleeping in, you go for a walk. Instead of eating French fries, you have fruits and vegetables and a bowl of yogurt. So it goes both ways. When your body is healthy and strong, it produces hormones that are protective for the brain. And when your brain is strong and healthy, you make decisions that keep your body healthy and strong.
I am curious. I'm curious, Majid, if you had to, it's not a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. If you had to veer on one side or the other, that today you can, or for the next week or the next month, you can attend to your body. You can sleep well. You can eat well. You can try to have less stress even in what you're doing, or you can do brain games. You can work on some cognitive things, memory, and which we'll talk about shortly, and things like that. Where are you going to ebb first? Because I sometimes question that if my body is in disarray, I can hardly get myself cognitively to engage. And so, thoughts?
This is an excellent question. And this is a question that I've heard many, many times. People have limited time to take care of their brain. And so if they have an hour a day or 45 minutes a day, what would be the best thing they can do during that short period of time to have the highest benefits for their brain? And the short answer is exercise. Physical exercise is the single most effective way to keep your brain young. I have developed what I call the 5 pillars of brain health: exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, and brain training. And that order is almost the order that I believe is helpful for the brain. In other words, I think exercise is the number one thing you could do to keep your brain nice and fresh and strong. And brain training is good for you. It definitely helps to increase the number of synapses in the brain, increase the number of connections in the brain, and keep your brain sharp. However, if I had half an hour only and I had a choice of going for a run or sitting down and doing Sudoku, I'll go for a run. Ideally, you want to have a schedule where you attend to all these 5 pillars of brain health.
Yeah.
You could exercise 45 minutes or an hour 3 or 4 days a week. And then on the other days, spend half an hour doing brain training, and spend maybe 10 minutes every other day to do meditation. And then on a daily basis, watch what you eat and make your sleep a priority. You don't need to put extra time for your sleep. You just need to find out what's preventing you from having a good night's sleep and addressing it. And so taking care of your sleep doesn't take time. You just have to have a setup. You need to have a plan of what you're going to do about your sleep. Your diet doesn't take extra time. You just have to make right choices. So you're going to spend time on exercise, and you're going to need to spend time on some kind of meditation, stress reduction, slow breathing, and you need to spend some time on brain training. And if you spend on average an hour a day, you can attend to all these things. It's not that complicated.
Okay, let's talk about that. The complicated. This has been another thing, Majid, that I have experienced somewhat. And then I actually have somebody who's going to be on the show soon with a new book. They have a facility over in Switzerland where the rich and famous come for help. Interestingly, though, these rich and famous, these are people who are pursuing health and wellness to a huge degree. They have infinite amount of money and time to spend. So they've got their trainers and their cooks and their therapists and their meditation gurus, and they've got all this stuff, and they're doing all the things, and yet they're not well, and finding that the stress, even the anxiety around managing and being healthy is deteriorating their health. Okay, that concept, I bother myself with, because I relate that the effort to keep it all going and to eat right and to get the right stuff and to exercise and to do the training and to do all these things. And my anxiety is up just around those. And I feel like I'm doing all those right things. And yet those termites are wearing me out, and I am just tired. And that's what I keep hearing with people, even these people with great biomarkers overall, and yet they're tired and exhausted. And I wonder about, one, the effort and the anxiety around sometimes our perspective, as sometimes sabotaging all these good efforts. Your experience?
Excellent point. I think it's not healthy to be obsessed about longevity. You need to add life to your years as you add years to your life. You need to enjoy your day today and tomorrow and next week before worrying about what's going to happen to you 20, 30 years from now. So I think, the way I would approach that is relax. It's not that complicated. You need to exercise and be fit. That's not complicated. I mean, you're doing it. You ski, you exercise. So box checked. That's not complicated. And, again, I usually recommend about 3 hours a week. But if you can do a bit more, great. If not, that's fine. 3 hours a week is plenty. And then sleep. Most common cause of insomnia is anxiety and the fact that people are worried about things in their life. And I think it's important for people to sit down, write down the list of their problems, and then take ownership of their problems. A lot of stress comes from people thinking that their problems have to do with other people not doing the right thing. Usually they think that only if my spouse did this and this and this, my life would be so much better. Only if my teenage kids would do this and this and this, my life would be better. If my boss was nicer, I would be better, and so forth. I think people need to take ownership of their problems and realize this is their problem. They can't blame it on others. And then try to work on themselves to handle the problems they have. Make a list of things that are bothering them. And for each one, have a strategy, a plan. Not necessarily a solution right away, but a plan to solve those issues. And so I think that's a great way to, ease your mind to be able to go to sleep. Still, there are times that a person goes through a crisis. A person may go through a divorce. A person may have a family member with cancer. Bad things happen. People's houses get on fire. And it's okay to have occasional periods of crisis. And during that time, you're stressed. That's life. However, what's not normal, what's not optimal, is to be stressed all the time to the point that you can't sleep at night. There are many, many things people can do to optimize their sleep. What I find interesting is that a lot of people feel that insomnia is a common problem, and so it's okay for them to have difficulty sleeping because everybody else has difficulty sleeping. That's not a good attitude. You need to realize that sleeping well is achievable. It's not like, oh my God, my life is so chaotic that I can't sleep at night. Well, try to get your life together. And if you find it difficult, I suggest that people see a therapist and receive what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is different than usual therapy in which a person just listens to your problems. With cognitive behavioral therapy, a therapist tries to help you to appreciate how you view life. What kind of narrative you have created for yourself? Are you following the narrative in your brain that, my life is a mess. And then every day you're expecting the mess to happen because that's your narrative. You need to change that narrative. And it's possible to change that narrative. I find it's interesting that many people would resist seeing a therapist because they say, I don't want to see a shrink. However, I think if you're intelligent and you realize that you have not been able to manage your stress, then seeing a therapist is a good idea. So we talk about exercise, which you can do. If your sleep is fragmented, if you wake up in the middle of the night, if you have difficulty falling asleep, I have a lot of information in the chapter for sleep in my book, but there are plenty of information. And of course, you can see a sleep specialist. Sleep specialists have the whole protocol of things to do or not to do. And, it's a treatable, fixable condition. You can't really go on with life having poor sleep every night. And when it comes with nutrition, that really doesn't require extra time. It requires choices. Like, are you going to make some, vegetables and have some grilled chicken for dinner, or just going to stop by a McDonald's and have a hamburger? That is a choice. And I don't think that eating healthy requires much more time than eating poor, highly processed foods. So, I don't think eating should take extra time. And then when it comes to stress reduction, we just talked about it. One thing that helps is slow breathing for 10 minutes a day. It's incredible how effective it is to just sit there. Don't do meditation. Don't do anything exotic. Just sit there and breathe slowly for 10 minutes. What I recommend is to breathe in for the count of 6, hold for the count of 3, and breathe out for the count of 6. Set a timer and stick with it. It's not as easy as it sounds because the moment you start breathing, your body calms down, you realize, oh, I haven't called that person. Oh, I need to respond to that email, and so forth. Resist doing things. Set aside every other things that can distract you and just breathe 10 minutes slowly. And you know what? Research studies have shown that this slow breathing, which is called HRV biofeedback, actually reduces the amount of amyloid in the brain. It actually reduces the footprints of Alzheimer's in the brain. Isn't that incredible? You just sit there, breathe slowly for 10 minutes a day, and you will have less Alzheimer's pathology in your brain. I mean, That's incredible. That's incredible. So it's definitely worth that 10 minutes a day. And then finally, brain training. I mean, you're at home, you're at night, instead of checking your Instagram, just do a Sudoku. That's what I do. If I go to bed before fall asleep, I may read a book or I may do some difficult Sudokus. And actually, that makes me sleepy and I fall asleep. So here we go. And about an hour a day, you can really attend to those 5 pillars of brain health without any expensive equipment. You don't need any gadgets. Just realizing that these 5 pillars of brain health are going to help you to keep your brain healthy and strong. Many factors shrink the brain, things like stress, insomnia, poor diet, sedentary lifestyle, diabetes, obesity, smoking, all of them shrink the brain. But these 5 pillars of brain health, exercise, sleep, nutrition, slow breathing, mindset, and then brain training, literally grow the brain, literally make the parts of the brain called cortex and hippocampus larger.
Majid, you, in the topic of insomnia, you said we have somewhat normalized that pathology. We're talking here about the invincible brain, about brain health, about and referencing Alzheimer's and dementia and cognitive decline. In my lifetime, so yeah, I'm 55 years old. I don't remember that being a topic of my youth, of my childhood or my youth. It seemed rare. A lot of things, of course, pathologies we have today seemed rare that now are so common. And it feels to me like that we have normalized cognitive decline. It's just an expectation. We've normalized it. And it seems to be just proliferating like crazy. It feels like it's going on and on and on. And as you know, and you talk about in the book, a lot of focus we give to genetics, which to me makes no sense. Why would we genetically be creating and falling into more and more cognitive decline, which then you get into talking about lifestyle? And where would you, on that aspect of normalized, well, there, what do you attribute it to? Let's just go there. That's a big topic, elementary topic, but a big one to go, okay, we've got more, it seems like more of these cognitive issues than ever. Why?
I think there's more talking about it. I don't think that, people on average are experiencing cognitive decline any more so than they did 100 years ago. I think people are more cognizant of their cognitive functions and people are worried about it more so than in the past. In fact, several studies have shown that people who live in Western European countries and parts of the United States are having better brains than the previous generations. For example, a study in Framingham in Massachusetts showed that each generation of people from born in 1930s until 1960s has a slightly larger cortex and hippocampus. So in this part of the United States, where people presumably are more conscious about their health and their lifestyle choices, their brains are larger and their cognitive functions are better. The incidence of Alzheimer's disease is about 13% less in that area than the previous generation. Similarly, in the countries like Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, they are having fewer cases of Alzheimer's disease than the previous generation. And their level of cognitive functions is one notch better than people 10 or 20 years ago. So we have come to appreciate that the new generation of elderly have caught on that exercise is good for them, that smoking is bad for them, that they need to really optimize sleep, that they should avoid junk food. So I'm looking at it the other way. I see an horizon where the next generation of people, including two of us, when we get to our 80s and 90s, we're going to be sharp. We're going to be doing things. We're going to be skiing. We're going to be doing podcasts. We're going to be reading, writing, joining book clubs, traveling, living a full life. Yes, we may be slower than we will be, when we are in 80s and 90s, we'll be slower than when we are in our 30s or 40s. But what's the rush? There's no rush. I think to be realistic, there will be a little bit of decline, maybe 2%, 3%, 4%. I mean, when you're in 80s, you can't run as fast as someone in your 20s. We need to accept that. Let me give you a little story. I do triathlons. And a few years ago, I was so proud of myself to hit a new best time. And I had done the swimming, I had done the cycling, and I was doing the running, and it was about, a mile or two before the finish line. And I was, running, thinking, so proud of myself. And this elderly gentleman who clearly looked like he's at least 70s, if not 80s, he was passing me. And I said, no way, I'm not going to let that happen. So as exhausted as I was, I tried to just beat this guy next to me. And I admired him. I said, good for you. You're like 30 years older than me. And look at you. You're running faster than I am. And you have finished the triathlon. You're just, about to hit the finish line. So I'm going to be that guy when I get to my 80s. And I think people need to set that goal for themselves. You need to forget Alzheimer's disease. Again, to be fair and balanced, there are people who have good genes. There are people who seem to do everything wrong, and yet they're in their 90s. They smoke, they never exercise, they eat all the junk food they want, and they're in their 90s. Like, how did that happen? Similarly, there are a small percentage of people who seem to have done everything right. They have exercised, they have kept their brain active, and they're still becoming demented in their 80s. In my experience, that accounts for 5% of people. 5% of people either have good genes and are doing exceptionally well despite having poor lifestyle, and there are 5% who've done things right, and yet they become demented. And that's the important thing to consider. It's not like you have good genes and that's all it is. Genes play a small role for late life cognitive function. It's different than early onset Alzheimer's disease. With early Alzheimer's disease, if your parents develop Alzheimer's in their 50s, unfortunately, you have a 50% chance of getting it. But the late life Alzheimer's disease is a soup of problems. It's not just plaques and tangles, it's how much shrinkage you've had in your brain because of poor blood flow, too much inflammation, and difficulty rinsing your brain at night. Those factors, along with plaques and tangles, are causing your cognitive decline, and most of those can be slowed or reversed with your lifestyle choices. Let me give you one more information.
Yeah.
The other thing that we have come to appreciate is that even you have certain genes, your lifestyle factors can impact your DNA. We call that epigenetics. So when you exercise a lot, when you meditate, you can actually change the expression of genes on your DNA. There are these things called methyl groups, which are like small little tags. And when you're stressed out too much for a long time, you put a lot of those methyl groups, methyl little tags on the DNA, which suppresses the expression of genes. And when you meditate, you reduce those methylations and you allow the expression of genes. So your lifestyle factors can literally modify your genes. You can't blame it on your genes. I think you can't just say, I have bad genes and that's the end of me. That will be a total waste, total mistake.
Yeah. Well, you address that and talk about, do our genetics matter? Sure, but a lesser degree than what we tend to culturally give credit to. And you say even more so what matters. And I wanted to hit each of these: family environment, education, work, social interactions, hobbies, and dedication to learning and practicing. I feel like these are the actionable things that we can all address right now. You've talked about sleep and nutrition and exercise and stress reduction. But these things, as you talked about before, we so often are prone to giving responsibility somewhat to external things that we can't control. That list right there are all things I control. So I want to go through that, because if you say, okay, gosh, your cognitive ability, my propensity for decline, dementia, something that has relevance for that is family environment. Tell me about that one.
Yes, I think family environment is particularly important in childhood. If you live in a family where the average food on a table is junk food, highly processed food, and fast food from restaurants, and if you live in a family where anxiety, stress, and arguments are just a daily routine, unfortunately, you're going to have difficulty developing your brain as well as it could otherwise. So early childhood experiences can have a profound effect on brain development in the future. The same goes with early childhood education. One reason that people who are born in 1950s and 60s have a slightly larger brain, about 6%, than those people who were born in 1930s may have to be the fact that later generations had better childhood education, that more and more people finished high school in later generations. So early childhood education and environment makes a huge impact on brain development. However, this is not to say that if you had poor childhood environment that you're doomed, that you're going to develop Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Our brain has a high degree of neuroplasticity. Our brain can change with our daily habits at any age. So even if you had poor childhood experiences, if you start a lifestyle which focuses on those 5 pillars of brain health that I mentioned, you will be able to reverse any damage that had happened to your brain and have a fresh and strong brain in the future. One of the things you mentioned is the importance of socialization. More and more studies show that people who socialize more often have a healthier brain and live longer. We don't know exactly why. Part of it could be because when you socialize, you have higher levels of dopamine in your brain. You enjoy yourself, and that reduces stress and reduces cortisol levels. And that may be the link as to why socialization leads to better cognitive function with aging. Another factor could be the level of intellectual stimulation during social events. When you are with friends and family, different topics come up. You have to attend to those conversations, think about what they're saying, and think of what you're saying. So you're challenging your brain a little bit, and that may be why socialization is helpful. Or it may be something deeper that we haven't discovered yet. But definitely socialization helps.
Well, tell me about that there, because as you talk about family environment and reference childhood aspects, so today is for somebody who's in their 50s and social interactions and still environment. I will always remember my best friend, Dr. Randy James, functional medicine doctor. I mentioned that before we started. And he had a patient. And at one point he said to this lady, he says, I just don't know how I can help you as long as you are within the environment of your family and your adult son that seems to be toxic to you and your husband, that the stress that is causing you. He said, I don't know if there's that much more I can help you with that's going to supersede that. That's sabotaging everything. And so when you talk about family environment and social interactions, I think about how many people, well, and you do talk about work here, are in a family environment or a social environment or a friend's environment or a work environment, that the social aspects of that are, I don't want to overuse the word toxic, but they're causing the person stressing themselves out as a result of their perceptions of these environments. We're back to the circumstances and the environments. And as much as I want to control my inner self regardless, I also choose to live in a national forest for a reason. And I choose good relationships for a reason. And how often do you find that people who are doing a lot of the things well, they're sleeping, they're eating, they're exercising, and yet they have, as you said, social interactions and environments, family, whatnot, that is sabotaging everything?
Yes, I think that people who work in toxic environment or who have family members who are a source of stress for them are in a disadvantage because they're stressed and that stress is affecting their brain. However, I think people need to be wise in how they handle the situations. For example, one option is what you're doing. You try to choose and control your environment and stay away from people who stress you out or make you feel uncomfortable. Another option is to reduce your expectations. I think people who honestly decide, you know what, I don't expect anything from anyone. I accept that people are not perfect. I accept that people have different goals, different priorities than I do. And a conflict arises when my expectations and my ideas conflict with others around me. And who's there to say that my way of thinking and my expectations are better than theirs? Because I'm probably a source of stress for them. And so one way to handle toxic environment is to really reduce your expectations. Accept that people are not perfect, accept that you're not perfect, and expect and focus on improving yourself. Focus on, let's say you work in a work environment and your boss is rude and your coworkers are not cooperating. Well, see if you can change jobs, because as long as these people are there, you're not going to be able to change them. So try to change jobs. Sometimes it's not possible to change jobs. You have a job that's perfect for you and you can't find another job. So you just have to do work in that environment. In that case, you just tell yourself that, you know what? I'm going to be the nicest guy around here. I'm going to expect that they'll be rude and they will not do their parts and that I have to work more. I just accept that. And in doing so, you work on yourself instead of stressing on why other people are not doing what they're supposed to do. And that the strategy is also very helpful in your relationship with your spouse or your children. You try to have them cooperate and do the things you want them to do. But if it's not working, you either step out and just leave, or decide that, you know what, I'm just going to expect that they will do all the wrong things. I'm going to expect that. I'm going to expect that they won't do anything around the house, that they spend all the money they want, that they're not really listening to me, and everything else is bothering you. Just say, you know what? I'm going to expect that they will be like that. So any day that they're less than that is a good day. It really makes a huge difference on how you view environment. One thing I tell myself and others is, if somebody stresses you, that's on you. Because you are the one who are perceiving what they're saying as inappropriate or not fair. You're the one who's perceiving what they're doing is unacceptable, but it's you perceiving them. They're fine. So if you feel stressed because of other people's actions, it's on you. So you need to change your mindset and realize that these things are not worth your hippocampus. These things are not worth shrinking your brain. And so you need to set the goal that I'm going to protect myself. And if protecting myself means to have much lower expectation from people around me, I'll do just that.
I appreciate the perspective of, somebody irritating me is on me. I want to take responsibility. I strive to take responsibility for that. And to that point, I want to be Viktor Frankl, right? Who is found a peace or a security within himself, regardless of the circumstances. So I strive. So I am working to do that. And I also love Dan Buettner's Blue Zones, where I'll paraphrase that. He said, it seems like it's easiest if you just have people around you who support your way of life and whatnot. And I'll admit, I've done that. I live in a national forest. I have people around me who are primarily at peace and peaceable folks. And I live a lifestyle that helps this be a lot easier for me. Because when you get down to that, my expectations, I'd say I probably have high expectations. And so I hear that. I would say I probably veer on crafting an environment best I can. And I would say I have a lot of control over creating my own blue zone, which my gosh, makes it easier. And yet when I find myself in those positions, like I will shortly when I'm in the airport and dealing with the minutia of life, I will need to call upon, I'll think about you and question my expectations. Fair?
See, I think that people who are perfectionists and have high expectations of themselves forget that other people are not like that. See, you appear to be someone who has high standards, and you set up high standards for yourself and you're achieving them. But you have to realize that other people have had different childhood experiences, they've had different life environments, they have education, cultural backgrounds, and they're doing life the way they know it's good for them, which is not necessarily the same as yours. And so keeping that in mind helps a lot when you travel through the airports.
Well, again, this list that you gave with genetics being a factor, but you're going to minimize the factor somewhat. And you're looking at, again, family environment, education, work, social interactions, hobbies, dedication to learning and practice. I look at that as these are addressing my activities, but really a lot of my worldview, my daily existence. Again, that energy that I'm within every day. So, again, if we look at exercise, sleep, our nutrition, and these things that we can address, stress management, whatnot, you do speak so much to these aspects that I'm going to bring around to what you give focus to is purpose. How do we see life? Almost I don't want to put it into a positive, negative, optimist, pessimist, glass half empty, half full, but I feel like you're tending to that a lot, that even that is we can be doing a lot of the right things, but if we have this undergirding worldview, that may be more important than anything.
Yes, I think it's important to have a sense of purpose in life. I think if we decide that, something gives meaning to our life, then we have something to wake up for. We have something to work toward. And that really simplifies life. We've been talking about how to grow old and stay sharp. But why? Why do you want to be sharp in your 80s? And that's where purpose comes in. If your purpose is to, for example, help your grandchildren be successful in their life, or if your purpose is to become rich, or if your purpose is to become famous, or if your purpose is to be a good Christian, a good Muslim, a good Jewish person, if your purpose is to help environment, if your purpose is to help others, whatever it is that gives you purpose allows you to have a reason to wake up in the morning and then go exercise and then eat healthier and sleep better. And many studies have shown that individuals who have a high sense of purpose in life sleep better, eat better, stress less, live longer, and are less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. And these are based on scientific literature. This is not just simple observations. Thanks to the work of Dr. Riff, who is a psychologist in Wisconsin University, we have questionnaires that quantify your sense of purpose in life. So, for example, a person may have 1 out of 10 sense of purpose in life. There's a person who just lives for paying the mortgage and, maybe we go on vacation once or twice a year and really doesn't think about the future or why do I do what I do. They just live life to take care of daily routines. They don't even think about what's my purpose in life. And then you have someone who's 10 out of 10, someone who, let's say, is religious and really attends to his or her faith, goes to religious gatherings and helps with the community activities and so forth. So this is a 10 out of 10 versus 1 out of 10. Now, if you look at the brains of these two types of individuals, you see that people who have a better sense of purpose in life have better brains. Their brains are fresher, healthier. People who have a sense of purpose in life are 50% less likely to develop strokes. 50% less. And it's not because they exercise more, or you adjust for those things. You adjust for how much exercise people are doing, what they're eating, and so forth. Just a sense of purpose in life is associated with a 50% less risk of developing strokes. And strokes are the number one cause of disability in the United States, and they're the second leading cause of death in the world. So if you define for yourself what it is that excites you about life, what it is that gives you purpose in life, that mindset, without doing any extra work, no extra exercise, no extra diet, no extra anything, just the sense of purpose makes your brain healthier. And if you take two individuals who have, let's say, 5 out of 10 Alzheimer's pathology in their brain, person A and person B, they each have 5 out of 10 Alzheimer's pathology. Let's just make it simple. And you do cognitive tests on them. A person with a sense of purpose would function better in a cognitive test. Their brain works better, even if they have Alzheimer's disease in their brain. And needless to say, that people who have a sense of purpose in life live longer. So if you were asking me a hack to have a better brain with doing very little, is to define what excites you in life. And then think of that every day. Set that as the carrot in front of you that you're going to achieve, the reward that you'd like to achieve. For example, I feel passionate about educating people about prevention of Alzheimer's disease and how they can become brain superagers. They can become someone who reaches the age of 90 and is sharp and independent. That's what excites me. Why it is? Well, I've spent 30 years at Hopkins and Harvard studying these things and seeing patients, and it is what it is. I enjoy it and I love it, and that's why I'm here on your podcast. So if you don't have a sense of purpose, you can find it. In my book, I wrote 7 questions that you can ask yourself to define and find your sense of purpose if you don't have it already. Things like, what would you do if nobody was looking? What kind of daily life would you have if nobody is watching you? Would you read more? Would you exercise more? Would you do more community work? And nobody is watching. And why? Why would you do that? Express those things to find your sense of purpose. Another question is, what kind of job would you do if nobody paid you? And that really shows what drives you from within, not from an outside reward such payment, but from within. For example, I love to teach. So even if somebody didn't pay me, I still would teach because I just love it. I love being in a classroom. I love mingling with students. I just love it. And it's different for other people. Somebody, again, may enjoy going for walks, and somebody else may take care of the grandchildren, or somebody else may do other things. So these are some of the questions. Another question is, what would you want people to say after you died? What would you want people to say in your eulogy? And that really addresses what it is that you want to be, what it is that you want to be known with regards to other people. So answering questions like this can help you find your sense of purpose in life. And then pursuing your sense of purpose in life is incredible. It's incredible how effective and helpful it is.
Let me dig in with something on the purpose. You talked about purpose being a hack. If we want a hack to cognitive wellness is purpose, but I want you to address our attitude about the purpose, because I have found people who do have a purpose, and yet their attitude about their purpose, again, I would say is sabotaging it somewhat. Here are you, Majid, and you have the purpose to help people with their cognitive wellness. We could paint a picture over here of you waking up in the morning and frustrating yourself. Now, why are people doing this? Why won't they listen? Why won't they pay attention to it's in my book? Just follow it. And we keep seeing this cognitive decline, and you could have a bad attitude. I see this depicted in the media. I see this depicted somewhat in movies and TV shows that Hollywood's putting out, and somebody who has a purpose and they're pissed off about it. And yet we kind of uphold that. And I don't like the promotion of this. So you said 2 or 3 times as you were just talking about your purpose and being excited about it. And talk about that. I almost want to look at it as a hack of a hack. Not only purpose, but then how your attitude is around the purpose. Fair?
Yes, I think it's important to keep a smile on your face every day and, take it easy and whatever you do. because most things don't matter. Most things that bother people really are trivial. And I always think about, is this going to hurt my hippocampus? Let me give you a little story. I have 2 daughters who are in college now. And when they were little, when they were in elementary school, they used to come with me when I traveled, and I've been like 40 countries giving lectures in different places. And they would come along, and they would just sometimes just sit and listen. And so my younger daughter, Maya, was in second grade once, and she was supposed to write a review about a simple book. And I said, honey, you haven't even started reading this book, and it's due in 2 days. And she said, Dad, you're stressing me out, and that's not good for my hippocampus.
Good girl.
And she still is like that. I know she still say, Dad, it's not that deep, And I like that about her, because it really makes her put things in perspective and do her work without getting stressed out about it. And so that's what I do every day. I always ask myself, is this situation worth my hippocampus? Because I have seen so many studies that have shown that when you stress out, levels of cortisol increase in your blood, and cortisol is particularly toxic to your hippocampus, the very part of the brain that's critical for learning and memory and Alzheimer's disease. So then, if it's not worth it, I'm not going to stress about it. And of course, stressful things happen. You can't avoid the fact that there's a car accident, there's a leak in the basement, you need a new thermostat, you need a new car, you need to, problems happen in life. And so it's okay to have periodic stress. I mean, that's life. However, you don't want to stress about everything, including as to why people are not doing what they're supposed to do, and why am I not being able to achieve to do the things that are good for my sense of purpose in life, because that would defeat the having a sense of purpose in life. I think, you need to keep a smile and always say, it's not that deep.
Well, I wanted to do justice to a statement that you said. You have this in the book, and it brings up again this, I'm going to keep expounding, or maybe we'll anchor the show here on expounding on, again, the responsibility that we take for our brain health. You have in the book, you may not think about your lifestyle and activities in terms of how they affect your brain. That feels like a cultural disease to me, that we don't align those. And here's my example, Majid. I have kids. I've got a bunch of kids, and a lot of them are at the driving age or beyond, but they're looking at cars and generally looking at a used car, and they're prone to look at the brands, right? The brands and the models, and see what the history is, the longevity of these brands. Oh, this brand seems to last longer, and this model seems to last longer. It's a used car, though. If you're buying a new car, great, but these guys are buying used cars. And I'm looking at that, the brand, kind of like genetics. And like, maybe you got good genes, maybe you got bad genes. I'm going, I feel like what affects the car most, if you're buying a used car, is how the person before you took care of it. How many owners did it have? How many wrecks did it had? Look at the Carfax. How is it taken care of? And I really don't care about the model that much if you're looking at a 10-year-old car or a 5-year-old car, as much as how it was taken care of. Now, that said, we tend to think about a car and think about ourselves and think physiological, right? We think okay, yeah, if you banged it up and if you didn't take care, if you ate bad and you smoke and you drink and you whatever. But what are the highlight things that we do to abuse our brain? Or did I just say it? It's still the lifestyle choices. It is how we're banging up our body.
Well, I think your analogy with the cars is right on. If you have a good car and you haven't taken care of it, then it's really not a good car, because you haven't changed the oil, you haven't really changed the tires, and it's more likely to cause problems. Obviously, the cars which have a solid base to begin with are more likely to resist all the misuse and abuse that they have had. But on average, I think if you have an old Chevy from 1960s and you take good care of it, it's still going to run. It's still going to run. And and still sometimes you see on the road these old antique cars that are well taken care of, and they're still driving quite well. And I think we can think of our brain the same way. If you take care of your brain, you really can keep it in top function. Again, the 1960s Chevy is not going to keep up with a Porsche in a highway, but neither do you need to go that fast anyway. If you keep your brain healthy, there may be some wear and tear as you grow older, and you may be not as fast as when you were in your 50s or 40s, or you may not be as quick in calculating numbers, and you may still forget some names, and you may have word finding difficulty, but those are minor. Those things will not prevent you to enjoy life. They will not prevent you to read or to take on new hobbies or go skiing or cook or try new hobbies. I think we need to do just that. We need to take care of our brain the same way we would take care of a car. There are specific things you need to do. You need to change the oil, do the inspection, change the tires, and, be careful if there are dents to fix them right away. You do those things, that car is going to run for a long time. And same applies to your brain.
I ultimately find in going through the book, you giving great content and helping me confirm I need to take care of this body, this package. I need to take care of this physiologically, but also psychologically, as much as doing some brain activities and keeping my brain sharp and growing my brain. I find myself bringing back to take a deep breath, lower my shoulders, smile, and be at peace. And if I can't be at peace, man, I'm at risk. I'm, as your daughter said, I'm hurting my hippocampus, and whatever it takes, I want to pursue. So I'm just grateful for the content, grateful for the research, and grateful to you for you bringing it to us in a palatable way. These are simple things that I can do. I feel like you did that well. And you've said that. These are simple things. They don't have to take a lot of time. And it can be the difference between my health span equaling my lifespan. And I want to be cognitive as can be till that last breath. So I just thank you. I'm grateful.
Sure. Yeah, I think your mindset really determines how happy you are on a daily basis. And mindset can change. Just because you've had a certain mindset, it doesn't mean you have to stick with it.
Yeah.
See, that's what I find interesting about cognitive behavior therapy. We had many patients who had a narrative in their mind about how their life is going and why things happen to them the way they do. Let me give you an example. I had this patient who was in her early 70s and came to see me because she wanted to have better memory. And so we did our program, and her memory was improving. She was learning 100 words, which she couldn't believe. And in my first session, I said, "What bothers you? What are the sorts of stresses in your life?" And she said that when she was in her late 20s and early 30s, her parents died. And when it came to inheritance, her brother cheated her on inheritance and took the house. And she never had her share of the house. And she is so resentful of her brother doing that to her. And for decades, it's been bothering her. She's frustrated because she feels like if she had that $1 million back then, her life would have been so different today. So I talked to her about that. I said, listen, it's been a long time since that happened. And you repeating that narrative is not helping you. So she worked with a social worker in our team and did cognitive behavior therapy. She went over the effectiveness of her regretting what happened to her decades earlier and how that's not helping her today. If anything, that resentment, that anxiety is eroding her brain. And, this aha moment doesn't happen overnight. After several sessions, she came to realize that she still has a full life ahead of her, that her life is pretty good as is. Maybe it would have been better if she had $1 million back then, but right now, she is doing fine. And then when I saw her for follow-up 6 weeks later, she said, Dr. Fotuhi, I wasted so much of my life being frustrated by what my brother did to me. And I wasted so much time and energy on it. And now I feel liberated. I feel like a new person. And I think that's what a cognitive behavioral therapy can do to people. It can help people change the narrative in their brain. See, there's no such thing as reality. What I consider reality is my perception of the world. So you may be Democrat, you may be Republican. So from a view of a Democrat or Republican, you analyze what you hear and see in the news. And you always interpret things with that perspective in mind. Realizing that is your assessment of the situation. It's not really reality. It's what you perceive as to why this happened or why that happened. And that's what people do all the time. They have a mindset, a narrative in their head as to how life is. And then they interpret everything that happens around them in that perspective. Let me give you another story. I was in Park City, Utah, skiing. And then after skiing, how you go in the jacuzzi and just warm up. And I was just sitting there. I was actually skiing by myself on that trip. And next to me was this gentleman who was very Christian, very devout Christian. And he kept saying God helps him every hour, all the time. And so this conversation was going around 5, 6 people in the jacuzzi. And he said, God helps me all the time, all the time. Look at me, I'm here. It's God's will that I'm here because I'm rich, I can afford it. I'm here in a jacuzzi in a beautiful ski resort. God is helping me every hour. Look at me, I'm talking to you. God put you here so I can enjoy talking with you. So in his brain, he was convinced that God is helping him every hour. And he saw what he thought was the case. Maybe it is the case. I can't really argue with that. But the point is this, he was seeing what he was believing. And that's the point. We create our narrative in our head and interpret the world. And then everything we see is interpreted, and that's our reality, which is different. And that goes back to how we're talking about a toxic environment at work and how other people do things that are not in line with what we do, because they are perceiving their realities in their own little minds. And we are perceiving our reality in our minds, and these two don't coincide. They don't overlap. And that's where the frictions come in.
That right there, what you said, that's probably the mic drop of the show right there. I have the opportunity to erode or grow and support my brain. And possibly the greatest thing is my narrative, how I see, and then from how I see and perceive, how I feel. And it's really, Majid, that's for me, the most motivating construct right there. I do want an invincible brain. So I will chill out. How's that?
That's good. That's great.
Okay. I'm going to do it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your guidance. I am a grateful student and excited to share this with everybody I can.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for reading my book so carefully. I really appreciate that.
I did, and I will continue. Majid, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Well, thanks for joining us in this discussion. That again is Dr. Majid Fotuhi, and the book that's just coming out is called The Invincible Brain, the clinically proven plan to age-proof your brain and stay sharp for life. Till next time, here's to you and me bettering our brain and creating a better experience of our lives.
Yeah.